Welcome, everyone. It's another Relate Well Live with Dr. Rick Marks, and it is so good to have you join us on tonight's Relate Well Live with Dr. Rick Marks. We're gonna have an interesting one tonight. We're gonna talk about what it really means to fight dirty. We're gonna talk about what I call disinfecting swipes. We got COVID out there today, and everybody wants to disinfect this and disinfect that, and you're disinfecting your hands by washing your hands and cleaning your hands. And we got, disinfecting swipes to wash off the countertops or wash off this. And nobody's disinfecting the swipes in their marriage, are they? We're going to have a conversation about that tonight. So, welcome. And it's good to have you. And I hope that you'll find this actually at the end encouraging and inspiring. All right. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight: disinfecting swipes in your marriage. Now, here's what I hope to happen. And I noticed that the Instagram, for some reason, keeps coming in and out, and I apologize for that. Who are with me on Instagram? We're on Instagram. We're actually streaming on 3 platforms right now: YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. I've got my camera right here for YouTube and Facebook. If you are watching me on either of those platforms, please feel free to interact with me. Let me know that you're out there. Say hi, ask a question, make a comment. I will be monitoring the comment sections on all 3 platforms. And right here, I have my Instagram and be monitoring that. All right. So if you're out there, say hi, say hello, ask a question. Let's have conversation as we go through this Relate Well Live with Dr. McMarks. And so feel free to jump in, make a statement, ask a question. Feel free to disagree if you want. All right. Those kind of things. I see Kevin. Hey, Kevin, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you stay the whole time. If you got to go, that's okay too. All right. Now, disinfecting swipes in your marriage. What in the world do I mean by that? Well, what disinfecting swipes are. They're, you got a container and it's filled with these, cloth-like paper, and it's got all kinds of chemicals on them. So when you pull one out and you wipe it down, whatever you're wiping down, you're killing 99.9% of the germs, right? 99.9% of the germs are killed with disinfecting swipes. And we use those things because we want a secure environment. We want a safe environment. We want an environment free from toxins, viruses, bacteria, all that kind of stuff. I have no problem with that. Have you ever noticed, though, that we'll allow toxins into our marriage relationships? You'll allow resentment and bitterness, anger, depression, anxiety, fear, negativity to be to start infecting. The idea of why disinfecting swipes. You allow those things to start infecting your marriage and your relationship. And so we need to talk about what is it that infects the relationship, and then how do we disinfect those swipes. Now, what is a swipe? I like to think of a swipe this way. Whenever we're hurt, whenever we're angry, upset about something, we feel wronged, we feel controlled, we feel shamed, we're made to feel guilty about something, we're disrespected, we feel that we're devalued, we feel that we're not important, we feel that betrayed. A lot of hurts and pains that we feel in the relationship. And your brain doesn't want that pain. But typically what happens is whenever we've been hurt or are angry or fear, then the brain kicks in and reacts at about 1/200th of a second, and it gets triggered. It gets emotionally triggered by things that people do. All right. And so when people are triggered, that trigger is actually an emotional reaction. Now, my mentor called that emotional reaction an emotional allergy. That was the term for it. That you're in an emotional allergy. An emotional allergy is an intense reaction. It's an intense emotional reaction to something in the present that is actually similar to your past. You see, the limbic brain, which is known as the emotional brain, has no concept of time. It just feels. That's all it does. It's an emotional brain. It just feels. It has no ability to think or reason. And when something happens in the world around you, in the environment around you, and you get triggered into an emotional allergy. That's an intense reaction. And what happens is the feeling, the allergy, manifests itself in a reactive behavior. So your reactions can be out of the fight response, the flight response, or the freeze response to the brain. Fight, flight, freeze. The fight, flight, and freeze response to the brain is actually tied to the lower level brain down here, where the cerebellum is, the amygdala, the brainstem, all of that area. That is your survival brain. That is the part of your brain that sure makes sure your heart's beating and it makes sure that you're breathing, those kind of things. It also makes sure that you're safe. That part of your brain is constantly scanning the environment for a threat. And the moment that it perceives a threat, at about 1/2,000th of a second, it gets engaged. And when that lower brain gets engaged, when you're triggered into what's called the stress response of the brain, fight, flight, or freeze, when you're triggered into fight, flight, or freeze, you're in a defensive posture. Now, you want this part of your brain working, by the way, folks, because if you're driving down 95, Interstate 95, and an 18-wheeler comes across the interstate at you, at about 90 miles an hour, you understand to stop and think about that threat can get you killed? You see, the prefrontal cortex up in this area, this is the slowest part of the brain. To think about something is slow. You want this part of your brain working. This part of your brain is the same part of the brain that animals have. Animal brains do fight, flight, and freeze. And God designed that part of your brain that when it perceives a threat at 1/2,000th of a second, it engages. It dumps epinephrine, norepinephrine into your bloodstream and adrenaline. And that cocktail automatically forces you to turn the wheel. You don't think about it. It's instantaneous. Why? Because when that part of your brain is engaged to deal with the threat, it has to disengage the thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex. The term is it hijacks the higher order brain. Why? You're not meant to think about the threat. So you have to shut this part of your brain down so you can react and stay alive. Folks, you want that part of your brain working. All right. You want that part of your brain working in situations like an 18-wheeler coming at you, a pit bull running your way. All right. But when it comes to intimate relationships, you better learn to regulate it once it's triggered. Once it's triggered, once that part of your brain is triggered, you've got about a 6-second window of time to step into that 6-second window and regulate the lower brain and get back to the higher order brain. But after about that 6-second window, your body's pretty well flooded with these survival neurochemicals, and you're just in a reactive response. Mature people don't react to things, they respond to things. Immature people react. The lower order in our brain is reactive. You understand that if you want to speak the truth in love, that requires emotional regulation. To be slow to anger, quick to hear, and slow to speak requires emotional regulation. And so when we are triggered into defensiveness because we feel hurt, we feel attacked, we feel threatened, then what happens is we end up engaging in dirty fighting. We infect the relationship through dirty fighting techniques. I call it, and relate well, fighting with ill will. And when you fight with ill will, you're going to harm your partner. But more importantly, you're going to harm the relationship. Because, see, you might harm your partner, But the greater damage you do is you harm what I call us. Whenever you harm them, you harm the relationship. And when you harm a relationship, you're harming your partner. You see, because your partner is a part of the us. Why would you want to go around hurting us? Because to hurt us is to hurt yourself as well. But in that defensive posture, you're not thinking about us. You only think about yourself. So, what are some dirty fighting techniques that infect your relationship, that create problems? You see, number one is escalation. You feel attacked, you feel threatened, you're trying to stay out of the fight, and all of a sudden it's like your brain goes, no more. And then you're back in the fight and things start to escalate. And when things start to escalate, you start to attack person's personality, you start to attack their motives, you start to attack their thinking, things escalate. And when things begin to escalate, energy rises, emotions rise, voice tone maybe gets sharper and harder. You see, escalation is when your brain is saying, I feel threatened by you, so I'm going to attack you. Why? Simple. A good defense is a good what? Offense. A good defense is a good offense. And so you escalate things. Why? To scare them, to shut them down. Why? Because you want to win. You want the power. You want the control because you feel hurt. Another dirty fighting technique is known as overgeneralizing. You always, you never, well, you're supposed to, when you use words like you always, you never, etc., number one, when you overgeneralize something, you always, you're actually wrong. I bet they could come with one time that they did not do what you said. And to overgeneralize those kinds of things, what you're really doing is you're attempting to put them on the defensive, to make yourself better than they are. See, I don't do this all the time, but you do. I'm healthier than you are. And when you begin to overgeneralize, you're really causing more harm, but you're infecting the relationship. Why? Well, you're really being critical of them and their motives in one sense. We also do it's cross complaining is another way we infect. Cross complaining is Luella said. Luella, by the way, if you don't know, is my wife. We've been married 38 years. Uh, come February 25th, and so in the early days of our marriage, we weren't really healthy and mature. We loved each other, but we didn't know how to love well, and so cross complaining is she would, let's say, make some comment about me, and I would say, yeah, that may be true, but you did. What about the time that you? Well, I remember that. Cross complaining is your partner sharing a hurt or pain with you, some complaint, but you can't handle it. So what do? You just kind of cross complain back. You kind of throw it back at them. It becomes a power struggle. Whose complaint's more important? I can complain more than you. You can complain more than me. Sadly, neither of you take responsibility for the pain you're causing your partner or the relationship. It's a cross complaining is another one. Of course, another way we infect our relationships is by blaming. You blame your partner. Because to blame your partner absolves you of responsibility. I did that because you did this. Well, I wouldn't have said that had you not. Well, the reason that happened was because you understand to blame your partner is to make yourself better than them and it's to make them the problem. Folks, if you want to keep pointing a finger at someone, feel free. But you understand that old adage, for every finger you can point, you got three pointing back at you. I think blaming is a form of dirty fighting. It comes from the fight response in the brain, you see. Because the idea here is I'm not at fault, you are. And you're the one that does all this. So you have to pay. It's your problem. Unconsciously, it makes me guilt free. I would have done that had you not done this. I blame you for my choices. what that really means is I don't have to take responsibility for what I do. You see, blaming. And another one is mind reading. Mind reading is another way we infect our partner. Now, what is mind reading? Mind reading is your brain, well, I say not just yours, all brains make assumptions about everything that you see at about 1/200th of a second. So whenever your brain sees something, it then makes an assumption about what it sees automatically. All right. It just makes an assumption. The assumption that your brain makes about what it sees is really based on your history and your experiences. Example, years ago, many years ago, when I started traveling, speaking, still have my insecurities there. If I saw a person, let's say, sitting in the room I was lecturing at, and they're sitting like this, my brain would interpret that to mean they don't like me, that they're bored with me. And so if that person would raise their hands to ask a question later on, I wouldn't call on them. Why? You don't like me. You understand? My brain saw something, interpreted what it meant, and then I treat them out of the assumption. Folks, it is very disrespectful to impose an assumption on someone. Mind reading is basically that. Mind reading is when you're making an assumption about a person's thoughts, motives, feelings, behaviors, choices. You see, and you have to stop mind reading. Well, how do you stop mind reading? I'll teach you how to read a mind. All right. I'm going to teach you how to read a mind. Now, it's really simple. What happens is mind reading usually sounds like this. I know that when you did this, it was because of that. I know that you think this of me. That's imposing assumption. They go, no, I don't. Yes, you do. That's mind reading. It's really dysfunctional. It's unhealthy. It infects the relationship. Here's how you read a mind. I would say, hey, Luella, can I read your mind about something? She would say, hopefully, yes. And then I use phrases like this. I'm thinking that you're thinking. I believe that you believe. I suspect if this happened, you would think this. And once I use that stem and then finish it, I'm thinking that you're thinking, I'm fat, dumb, and stupid and should kill myself. She would go, so you're thinking that I'm thinking you're fat, dumb, and stupid and should kill yourself? I go, yeah. Would I be right about that? And she goes, well, Rick, I think you're fat, dumb, and stupid, but I don't think you should kill yourself. She can clear it up for you. I suspect that you believe I'm really stupid. And she can go, no, actually, I don't suspect that. You see, it's much more mature to check out what you're mind reading rather than to impose it. And I learned from my mentor, use phrases like, I'm thinking, you're thinking, I believe that you believe, I suspect you believe this. And you just ask, would I be right about that? And they could tell you yes or no. All right. So, but mind reading is a way that we infect. Another way that we do it is through sarcasm. Yes, folks, sarcasm is a form of dirty fighting. It infects the relationship. Listen to this statement here. This sarcasm is a great way of saying something without having to take responsibility for the communication. If you say something like, you're always so smart. You think you know everything. That's sarcasm, but it's actually a way of attacking. A lot of things are said in jest, in humor, in sarcasm. That is really anger that's coming out. Sarcasm is a form of dirty fighting. It infects the relationship. It causes hurt and pain. Another way that we infect the relationship is showing contempt for your partner. Showing contempt. What is contempt? Name calling, insulting. Contempt could also be rolling your eyes like, right? Pursing your lips like, all that shows contempt. Contempt is when you are basically saying to the other person, you are inferior to me, that I am morally superior than you are. Contempt basically attacks and demeans a person's sense of self. It makes you better than them. It infects the relationship. It infects it. Walking away when someone wants to talk, it shows a sense of abandonment. You may go, well, I'm leaving because I can't handle it. That may be true, but at least tell them that. But when you just walk away, you infect the relationship. You see, when you avoid responsibility, you infect the relationship. You see, when you label someone, you infect the relationship. You see, I'm just covering some of the list of things I've written down here. Right? When you use money against someone, when you use the children against your spouse, you're infecting the relationship. All right? Unwanted advice giving. Do you know that it is not loving and caring to give advice that's never been asked for? I say it this way in my world, in our relatable programs. It is disrespectful to give people input into their life without their permission. In relationships of equals, ask first. Hey, can I share a thought with you? Can I tell you what my brain's telling me? Those are the phrases that I use. I ask permission, and they tell me no. I don't do it. All right. My kids are all adults today. I asked them, can I share a thought with you? Can I tell you what my brain's telling me? Can I make an observation? And they can tell me yes or no. If they tell me no, I leave it out. Why? Disrespectful. Most people don't want input. If someone wants input, they will ask for it, or you can ask permission to give it. You see, being inconsistent, saying one thing, changing it the next time, is a way to infect your relationship. All right. When you use others to justify your choices, well, I'm not the only one that thinks this way. And you label 2 or 3 people. What are you doing? What you're trying to do is build an alliance with other people against your partner. Basically, to say that I'm right and you're wrong. It will infect your relationship. And the thing is, though, just like germs on a counter, if you don't clean them, they're going to be there for quite a while. Things come along and touch that countertop, and those germs get on them. It begins to spread around the house. This kind of stuff does the same thing. When you two are toxic to each other and you're infecting the marriage relationship, don't fool yourself. That infection that you are creating in I call it the essence of the marriage, will then creep over to the kids. And now the kids are infected. They begin to react to the negative energy that's being created by the infection of the marriage relationship. Now the kids are being infected. And if that happens long term, those kids go to school with that anger and that hurt and that pain, and they act it out there. And now your toxicity has come down to the kids. They then take that toxicity, that hurt and pain in their soul, because you guys aren't together. You're in poisonous. They've now been poisoned. They go to school and poison others. That's right. I always tell people go, you learn social skills in the schools. No, you do not. No, you do not. If the school, public school, is the place that you learn social skills, if that is true, then you must be willing to admit, before public schools ever existed, nobody ever had social skills. Social skills did not exist until 300 or 400 years ago when we created public schools. Up until then, they must not have existed. Folks, social skills are learned in the home. They're learned at home. And what you do at home teaches them how to relate socially. In my personal opinion, the schools are the culmination of the social skills those kids have learned at home and they act it out at school. That doesn't, this is why you can learn negative things in a social environment. I get that, but it's not where you learn social skills. You see, you learn social skills at home. What are you teaching your kids? Is the toxicity, is the infection in your relationship infecting them? So you guys got a cold, they get the cold, and they walk out of the house and go to school and give the cold to somebody else. Anger, hurt, resentments. Little kid acts out, hits his classmate. He hits his classmate because he's so angry and hurt because of what happens at home, but he doesn't know what to do with that. And he's only 4 or 5 years old, and that's what he hits. Your infection spreading. Your infection is spreading. Sadly, most of us just don't care. Oh, we care about the germs that give us COVID or cold or flu or salmonella poisoning, don't we? But the relational infection, we don't really care about. Why? Hey, if this thing gets too sick, I'll throw it away. I will get another one. I will get another one. You need to disinfect. You need to disinfect your relationship. That's what disinfecting swipes are for. You see, the swipes you all give each other must be disinfected. Get that? Whenever you swipe at your spouse in anger, resentment, or fear, or hurt, pain, you got to disinfect that. Got to disinfect it. So, how do you do that? I have some thoughts for you. Now, real quick, if you're tuning in, be it YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, we're monitoring on all three tonight. Say hi. Tell me you're there. If you have a question, write out your question. If you have an agreement, let me know you agree. If you disagree, tell me you disagree. If you want further explanation about something, write it out to me. Let's have a conversation and a dialogue. Don't feel like you just have to sit back and watch. And I do appreciate that, by the way. But I would love to have dialogue with you to make this more meaningful for you so we can engage each other. So feel free to do that if you want. Now, we don't want the infection part to have the last word. We want to talk about disinfecting swipes. The things you do that will make sure you kill the toxins. How do you kill the infection you've been creating by how you treat each other? Well, one thing I want to say up front, that emotions are very logical. People say emotions aren't logical. Actually, emotions are very logical. If you understand, listen to me saying this, if you understand the logic of emotions. You say, hey, doc, what's the logic of emotions? Simple. Pain pursues pleasure. That's it. If you understand the logic of emotions, the logic is humans are wired to avoid pain and pursue pleasure. We all have a domain of pleasure. The domain of pleasure is our avoidance of pain. And a lot of people try and deal with painful things in their life in unhealthy ways. And when you recognize that people are trying to meet a relational need, be it security or they're needing to feel valued, they need to feel that they matter, but they do it in unhealthy ways, it makes sense why you're doing what you're doing. Not that it makes what you're doing right, but I love the way that Sai Rajas put it many years ago. He said it this way: it doesn't make right what people do. He said, but when you understand why they do what they do, here's what he said: it makes it understandable why desperate people do desperate things. The logic of emotions. So you're doing this because you're really feeling unloved? Yes. You're being promiscuous because you're looking for acceptance? Yes. Ah, the logic of motion. Pain perceives pleasure. The problem is your source of pain is your source of pleasure. You're getting pleasure in unhealthy ways, right? What is that old song? Looking for love in all the wrong places. And so, if we understand pain and pleasure, we also understand this. Are you ready? Love is an emotion. Love is an emotion. In the emotions of love are predicated on whether you are a source of pleasure for me. You see, when you treat people in a way that you are a source of pleasure, you treat them with the way we put it in our world is HREG. That's the equation. H equals REG. H equals REG. Here it is. Humility equals respect, empathy, and goodwill. I'm going to say it again. Humility equals respect, empathy, and goodwill. In Relate Well, we call HREG the four protectors of a relationship. In other words, when you live a life of humility, then you will treat people with respect. You will have empathy and you will treat them with goodwill. And when you treat people in a way that you're actually a source of pleasure, whenever people are a source of pleasure to you, then you have desire for the things that are pleasurable for you. And it's not just about relationships. In other words, I like mint chocolate chip ice cream. It is pleasurable. And because mint chocolate chip is pleasurable to me, I desire it. That's where I say I love it. Now, if you say, Rick, would you like walnut pecan? It ain't a source of pleasure. And because it's not a source of pleasure, I don't desire it. And you will never hear me say, I love walnut pecan ice cream. Mint chocolate chip, Rocky Road. Well, now we're talking. If I treated my wife on a regular basis with goodwill, respect, and humility and empathy in all aspects of life, even in conflict, I buy her the yellow roses rather than the red roses. I'm patient and I'm kind. I'm not rude. Then I'm a source of pleasure for her. And when you're a source of pleasure for someone, they desire you. And we feel love for the things that are a source of pleasure. We feel love for the things that are a source of pleasure. And when you stop being a source of pleasure, I won't feel love for you anymore. I will actually feel pain because you're now a threat. And you don't feel love for people who are a threat. Because what the brain does, it won't let you feel love for the people who are a threat. You actually feel fear, so you want to run, you want to fight them, or you want to freeze, fight, flight, freeze. You can't legislate an emotion. You can't command it to show up. It's impossible. People say, well, you can act your way into a new way of feeling towards someone. I personally think that is the most ridiculous statement if you think it through. If someone beats you on a regular basis, is emotionally abusive, verbally abusive, I don't care how much you act your way into a new way of feeling, you're not going to feel love for them. You're only going to feel threatened by them all the time. No, love is an emotion, but it's predicated on whether you're a source of pleasure. The way you disinfect negativity is love. Treat people in loving ways. Now that's a broad term. It's a vague term. In Relate Well, we operationalize the word love as HREG. Teach people with humility. And treat them with respect. Treat them with empathy. Never send a message you don't care. And treat them with goodwill in all aspects. That's your disinfecting. Now, to do that, you have to learn to communicate with goodwill. You have to learn to communicate respectfully. You have to learn to communicate and listen in caring ways. And that's what we actually teach and Relate Well. We actually teach you how to emotionally regulate, and how to communicate so that HREG is dominant in your life and in your relationship. And when you start to treat people out of HREG, humility, respect, empathy, and goodwill, you will disinfect your relation. You see, nobody wants to disinfect love. We want to disinfect resentment. We want to disinfect bitterness. We want to disinfect fear. We want to disinfect betrayal. You get the idea. And every single day, you can choose to live as a source of pleasure or a source of pain. That's what my mentor told me a long time ago. Dr. Gordon said to me, Rick, everything you do every single day, you're either a source of pleasure or you're a source of pain, Luella. And Luella, and Lori knew that her and I came from broken homes and those kind of things. I talked with Lori about, issues in my life and how it played itself out in my marriage in those early days with her and working for her and vice versa about me and Luella and me. And she said to me, Rick, if Luella really does have this wounded heart you talk about, you understand that you're not a person that God can heal. You're not a person that God can use to heal her, which I thought was an interesting statement. I said, why not? She goes, because as long as you're a source of pain, she would never let you heal her. If you chose to be a source of pleasure to her and you live that way on a regular basis, Dr. Gordon said, do you understand you will be a healing energy in her life? God would use you as a healing energy, but he can't use you healing energy if you're nothing but a source of pain. I had many years ago to position my heart to humility. I had to put pride aside. But here's what I found. When I chose to live a life of humility, I became a very powerful person. When I lived in pride, I was still a weak person. Humility can only be lived as a way of being by very emotionally secure people. Emotionally insecure and immature people tend towards defensiveness. Mature people tend towards compassion. How do you want to be? Do you want to disinfect the swipes that were negative in the marriage all along? You do that by choosing to live by what we call the 4 protectors of relationship: HREG, humility, respect, empathy, and goodwill. That's a way of being. And when you position your heart to be that kind of a person, you'll be respectful. You'll be caring. You'll be wise. You'll know when to talk and when not to talk. It's not about being right anymore. You understand agreement destroys a relationship? You know the percentage of problems in a marriage that have no solutions to them? Now, Dr. John Gottman calls these he calls them perpetual problems. He says these perpetual unsolved problems, 68% of problems in marriage have no solution. They just can't be solved. They're perpetual. Well, what are perpetual problems? Differences in beliefs, differences in religion, differences in child rearing, differences in culture. But here's what Gottman noticed in his love labs with these, what he calls the masters versus disasters. The masterful couples, then the disaster couples. Masterful couples never let unsolvable problems destroy the relationship. They protect the relationship from the unsolvables, where the disasters are trying to get right and wrong to force agreement. Forcing agreement will never create a relationship. It'll undo a relationship. You see, Americans don't value relationship. We value winning arguments. But in winning an argument, you'll harm the relationship. Could it be HREG is a way to disinfect the relationship? And even in the issues where you can't agree, you can still have an us. You can still have intimacy. You can still have friendship. That would take maturity. That would take humility. That would take goodwill. All right. So I see Frank wrote here. Wife says counseling doesn't work. We Skyped with you once, and she said we are healed. Obviously not, but she's never been to counseling. I've said how do you not do it? Doesn't work with you. I'm not sure how to. Yeah, Frank, if someone isn't teachable, there's nothing you can do. I just got done doing a series of intensives here. Thank you for your note, Frank. Someone asked me a few weeks ago, how many marriages have you saved? And my answer was none. They're like, what? I go, none. You haven't saved any? I went, no. Then why would people come to you? I said, well, if they're coming to me for me to save their marriage, they probably shouldn't come. I said, I don't save anybody's marriages. They save their own. Even God won't make you do something you don't want to do. So what makes you think of the power to make someone else do what they don't want to do? You see, motivation is intrinsic. And the person said, what do you do? I said, well, I create an environment that increases motivation and possibility by showing people and giving them clarity about what's going on and what they can do different. But if they don't choose to do the difference and keep doing what they've always done, that's their choice, which basically means they don't want the relationship. They just want to be them. Exactly, Frank. We say this way, it takes two to make a nuss and one to kill it. Two to make a nuss and one to kill it. One person can kill a relationship off. Why? They don't want it. They don't want to change, whatever it might be. But here's what I've learned. You can't change or move to humility if you're not teachable. Matter of fact, when you are humble, you are teachable. Pride prevents being teachable. That's why I told my kids, they're young. I said, you always know mature people. They're teachable. Immature people aren't. It's real simple. It's not rocket science. And so, just remember, folks, you get to decide how you want to be. Do you want to be a person who infects a relationship? Keep doing all these negative fighting things. Now, there's a lot more that I did not cover in terms of dirty fighting. There's like acting like a martyr, acting like you're a victim, stonewalling, which is just silence, right? Threatening. Don't you dare leave. You better do what I tell you. I'm going to divorce you if you don't. That's threatening. It's all infecting. It infects. It's dirty fighting. It's low and order brain coming out so you can put your partner in their place. But you get to decide every single day. Do you want to be someone who infects or disinfects? What would happen if both of us decided to live by HREG? We live a life of humility and goodwill and respect and empathy with each other. Do you understand? You probably wouldn't be buying any disinfecting swipes. Why? You're not infecting it. You're not toxic. You're not poisonous. I would argue at 38 years of marriage, I think my wife would agree on this. We don't buy disinfecting swipes anymore. Why? We don't need to. We've learned to live to respect each other and respect the differences. We don't let unsolved problems destroy us. We just navigate around them like masterful couples do. Why? I'd rather have her. I'd rather have the relationship. I'd rather agree and disagree and have an us. I hope this makes sense to you. And I hope in some small way it may have encouraged you and challenged you maybe to think about, how am I infecting? How am I infecting? Now, if you don't know what to do, communication is crucial to this. So if you'd like to learn more, here's what I want you to do. Go to the website, The Couples Communication Challenge, thecouplescommunicationchallenge.com. Go there and register during National Marriage Week, which is next week, February 7th to the 14th. We are doing a free class throughout the week on how to have a healthy marriage. And then at the end of that week, we're going to make a special offer on our Relate Well program. All right. So go there, watch the 4 classes that are coming up. They're next week with me. And then you can decide whether you want to learn all the skills and tools that will disinfect your marriage for you. So I hope you have a good evening. I will be back tomorrow night around 8 o'clock for another Relate Well Live with Dr. Rick. But right now, I have to go get some disinfecting swipes and clean the kitchen. Have a great evening, everybody. Bye-bye.